The size and sophistication of these criminal organizations that are engaging in cargo theft is so complex that it's impacting all of us. Everybody is losing right now, whether it's trucking companies out there that are being scammed by, criminal intermediaries, or on the brokerage side, people stealing our identities, similar to a situation that happened to me. And so it's very complex. And the complexity of it is growing in terms of their sophistication in cyberspace. And so it's an issue that I didn't even realize, but now know, having testified in front of Congress, it's causing about $35 billion annually in loss. And so it's certainly getting worse. And we're very excited with the change in administration, Republicans taking over the Senate. We've got Senator Cruz, who's taken note of this issue, and U.S. Senator from my home state. We're very appreciative of him giving us the opportunity to bring this to light, and hope he's going to continue to support us in some legislation to get some law enforcement engaged in this.
Ladies and gentlemen, today on Freight Caviar, Adam Blanchard and I will dive into his story and the alarming rise in cargo theft across the U.S. logistics industry. Mr. Blanchard is the founder of Tanager Logistics and Double Diamond Transport, two companies that I've had the pleasure of doing business with for over 4 years now. His crew is resilient, experienced, deeply loyal. They always speak true and do honest, hard work day and night. Before we dive into cargo theft, Adam, could you share your story and your cowboy spirit, your background? And we'll go from there.
No, Tom, great to see you this morning. I appreciate you having me on. Always good to see you. And as you were telling me earlier, where you are in Poland is similar to my West Texas roots here in the state of Texas. So always love being on here. Love seeing the cowboy hat and that European mount you have behind you there. But no, great to be on. Appreciate you having me. Look forward to what we discussed today, and hopefully bring some value to your listeners. But yeah, my name's Adam Blanchard, and started Double Diamond Transport back in 2014. We started with one truck and one trailer, I believe July 1st, 2014. Started our freight brokerage shortly thereafter, and just been blessed to have a great team, and you being included in that, and some of the folks that you've helped bring on for us that have been tremendously valuable to our organization. But we've grown now to around about 100 trucks. We've got about 20 freight brokers. And so, just have had an opportunity to watch this industry over the last several years. And through my experience as an attorney prior to starting our trucking company and freight brokerage, has just ultimately led me to work on a lot of legislative issues, which I know we're here to talk about briefly today. And so I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to talking with you and your listeners.
Heck yeah, Adam. So West Texas roots. You grew up in Amarillo, Texas. I know you played football back in the day, and I think we click because we're here in the Wild East of Poland. And one thing that has always stood out to me, and having worked with you and your leadership team, your leaders, has been that cowboy spirit of resilience, of honoring your word, and doing the right thing. And as we go into this topic of cargo theft, I want to travel down to the times of our grandparents at some point and explore how they would have been faced with similar challenges with train robberies and what's his name, Jesse James, and stories of old theft crises in the industry. And maybe looking back at what they were doing, we might be able to get some thoughts or ideas as to how we can fight this threat in a new world now. So before we go all there, let's start with his story, your story in Amarillo, Texas. Like, tell me about it. I've never had the chance to really hear more outside of you playing football and being a QB, if I remember correctly.
I, I was the quarterback for my high school football team, which, Friday Night Lights in Texas. I try not to bring that up much. I try not to be what we refer to here in Texas.
That's like an American dream, honestly,
star.
though. Like, everyone in Poland, when they picture America, that's like, boom, classic high school football cheerleaders. Like that's the high school dream. Am I wrong?
It's a lot of fun, Tom. There's no question that the what people think about in terms of high school football in Texas and Friday Night Lights. It's definitely true. It's, in fact, I just went back to my 20-year high school reunion last year. So feeling old, and now I have a son who's is playing football here in San Antonio. He's actually first team all districts safety for his high school. And so it certainly lives up to the hype, Tom. I did grow up in Amarillo, moved there when I was 6. My dad was an attorney. We'd kind of bounced around before then, but parents are both from Lubbock, which is about 2 hours south of Amarillo. And so my mom's family is from a huge farming family in the South Plains. And so spent a lot of summers growing up on my grandfather's farm, plow with him during the summer. It's about all you can do on a cotton farm in the summers is plow. But he ran a few head of cattle on his place too. So we'd run them through chutes, brand them, tag them, vaccinate them, deworm them, all the things. And so, just grew up very fortunately with, just a real sense of what it is to be in West Texas, the culture that we have, the type of people that we are. If you've ever had the opportunity to go to Amarillo or Lubbock, there's not much there. It's ugly, frankly, but weather leaves the desired. It's just flat and brown. If there was a place on earth, Tom, where the theory that the world is flat was created, it was in. I'll tell you, I was in law school landing on a flight coming in. There was this woman sitting next to me that her daughter was in Lubbock and at Tech, and she was commenting on how flat and brown it was. And I said, "Well, ma'am, there's a reason why we have all these prisons out here." Knowing she had a daughter, looked at me funny. I said, if somebody escapes, you can finish lunch for you. You have to go pick them up. And anyway, I said, ma'am, I'm kidding. There's not a bunch of prisons out here, but it is flat and brown. And at that point, she started laughing. But, what I would say probably much like the area you grew up in, Tom, it's about hard work, honesty, integrity. We just grow up with that culture. And so that's really translated to core tenets and values that define me. I was fortunate to have a great father and mother. And, it was all about, I could do about anything growing up. And while I would be punished, it was never, as bad as if I lied. And so I think when you're raised that way and the community in which you live has that same, core value system, it helps, develop you in your adolescence, and certainly translates into what I think are really good fundamentals in business, which is, operating where, a handshake with us is good as a contract. And so we appreciate working with people that are similar to that. And I think that's resulted in a lot of our success. But yeah, it was a lot of fun in West Texas. I did play high school football and started at quarterback, but that really, I would say, Tom, what I found the real value of that is it taught me a lot of leadership skills. And really, I think to develop as a leader, there's not a book you can read on it. It's something that you have to essentially learn through trial and error. And I have found growing up, I had to fail a lot in order to develop the leadership skill set that I think, fortunately, I've been able to develop over the years. And so I think, like anything, the life experiences you have to sit back and kind of evaluate how that's helping you develop as a person. And so a lot of fun experiences, but certainly don't live back in that area. And I've enjoyed now the development of our companies and my professional career, my family.
Oh yeah. And so those core values have now helped you build Tanager Logistics and Double Diamond, which employs over 100 people worldwide. Talk to me about how you've been able to take some of those values of honesty. You mentioning you would never be as punished as bad as if you lied, and how you've been able to grow your crew and in these companies today, and then how like I think you're the perfect person to be combating cargo theft, which in a lot of ways is based on lies, bad deception. We'll get into your story in a little bit about what's happened to Tanager Logistics and the Senate court hearing you had.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, I think there's been a lot that has, allowed us the opportunity to have the success we've had to date. I would say, to your point, core value system, the core fundamentals of who we are and how we operate is certainly critical to a career, whether it's starting and owning a business or being employed somewhere. I think that if you don't have those fundamentals, you're going to have a hard time, moving through your career regardless. I will say I also had met a lot of mentors through the years. In fact, my wife's father has been a mentor of mine for years. And so I would credit as much the culture and the way in which I was raised is a factor and contributor to the successes we've had, but also the mentors that I've developed over the years and reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Good to Great. And there's many, many others. And I'm certainly all your listeners and you, I'm sure, have heard of all of them. And, I learned very quickly that in order for us to have success, I just surround myself with people that are better and smarter than me. While I think that, I've had a bit of education, and I think I know there's nobody out there that can outwork me. There's no way you can grow a company without great people around you. And I think that can become a little overplayed sometime and a little cliche, but the reality is, when I'm sitting in a meeting now with my leadership, if I'm the smartest person in that room, I haven't done my job. And I will say I'm very proud with the development of the people we've recruited here, the development of their careers. We now at Tanager have director level positions. I mean, from going from a garage band trucking company, Tom, you came back on with us when we were much smaller, right? And so now I'm sitting there with the Johns and the Derricks and my team that well, that are making those decisions, they're becoming the decision makers. And so I think when you're getting to that point, that's when it becomes fun, because now you're watching not only other people's success in their career, but you're able to be a part of that. And so that, I think, has contributed more to where we have come, Tom, and you have seen us develop into than anything. But, certainly, like myself, they have, a lot of them are Midwest folks, Tom. While I would like to think that I'm born and raised in Texas, right? I'm a proud Texan. All you got to do is listen to me and know I'm a Texan, right? But I will say, not only from the people that work with us, but also a lot of the people I've met in the industry through my involvement with the American Trucking Association, TCA. I've met a lot of Midwest folks. And at first, I thought nobody could work harder than a Texan, but I will say these Midwest and upper Midwest folks, I think they may have us. So love working with them and the culture that they bring, because best I can figure, as much as they shovel snow up there, they got to be a little tougher than we are in San Antonio. We get a dusting of snow and you can shut the whole state down. But no, great team and great people. And I think when you have that mix of culture too, you start, developing kind of that melting pot of different views of things that I think have contributed to a lot of success for us.
So you were talking about some of the challenges that you guys had on your road to building both Double Diamond and Tanager, and then the recent challenges that a lot of people in the industry are facing, which is cargo theft.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Look, anybody, I think when you look at businesses out there and business owners, right? We've all done this where you look and go, man, look at all the success they're having over there. Once you've been in it, you realize that there's a degree of like functional dysfunction within any organization, right? And so we all face our own challenges. And I think whether you own a business, you work within a business, you're from whatever level, you're experiencing challenges in life. We have certainly lived that way. We started with one truck back in 2014. The truck broke down before it left the city limits in Lubbock. Welcome to trucking. And so, I think our whole journey has really been a product of, hitting hurdles, having issues, and figuring out how do you overcome those issues? How do you battle through those hurdles? And how, when you get knocked down, it's about how you get back up, right? And you know this, and I know this, and it's like every day you walk out of your house, somebody knocked you down, and it's a matter of just having the determination and grit to just say, no matter how many times you knock me down, I'm gonna not get back up. And I think when you're getting back up, figuring out how you can avoid that again. You know, we tell our team here all the time is we want you to have the autonomy to make decisions and punch the tickets. What I tell people all the time, make the call. And if you make a mistake, that's okay. I mean, I've bought trailers, Tom, that we never saw. We have done some stupid things. We should have probably gone bankrupt multiple times. But I said, look, make the call. If you make a mistake, just let somebody know. We'll circle the wagons and let's not do it again. I think to grow, you have to welcome failure. I think you have to welcome those challenges because, you know, nothing in life's worth doing and nothing in life worth doing is going to come without, you know, a multitude of challenges. And so we've experienced those in all facets of our business. Certainly, now having a larger team, it's nice. I don't have to do them all. I mean, I remember doing payroll to, you know, unclogging toilets and the whole 9 yards. And that's just part of it. I think it develops who you are. And I think my leadership skills have developed over the years, really through upward feedback that people have given to me. I mean, I used to be a super intense, in your face guy, not the easiest person to work with. And I think over the years, people making suggestions to me and me welcoming those suggestions has helped me really develop and define myself and my leadership skills. And I love hearing you say that you're seeing that translate to within our organization and the people that work in our organization, because that's what you ultimately hope for as a leader, is that you're developing others and that those people are developing within their career, and it's translating to, you know, positive reputation in the way in which you do business. And so I would say to that end, yes, we have dealt with a tremendous amount of this cargo theft, double brokering, just nightmare of things nowadays. And so I did have the opportunity, was asked by the American Trucking Association to go up to Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago and testify in front of Congress. It was actually a subcommittee of the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee. Senator Ted Cruz, senator from my home state here in Texas, is now the chair of the Senate Commerce Committee, and very fortunately has been listening to our pleas. I don't know what you would call it, but our industry association certainly have been communicating with this office about the struggles we're having related to this cargo theft. And very fortunately, with this new administration, we're seeing them respond by taking these issues up. And I would say the development of what we're seeing now from the U.S. Senate is very encouraging, and their willingness to get involved and hear the issues related to this fight that we've been fighting for years now, that is affecting around $35 billion worth of goods nowadays. They're seeing that and really a positive response from both sides of the aisle. So we're hoping this will be a bipartisan issue we can address, but certainly we can expand, Tom, on the problems we have had. I don't know how far you want to get into it, but you know, we have to utilize RMIS and all the various things for the double brokering. It's been quite a nightmare. But tell me where you want to start on my experience there, and then we can get into what we're talking about in DC.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was listening to the Senate hearing you sent me, or that I saw last week, and there you mentioned that you've had companies posing as Tanager Logistics, and you've tried to do something about it, but there's literally nothing that your hands are tied. It's like, what, like, and they've been booking loads as you guys, and they've been tarnishing your reputation. And reputation is something that I've talked about with Mark McCullough recently in Vegas for Manifest, and how Warren Buffett always says, and to the degree of training your team and your leaders is like, you've bought trailers that you've never seen. We've all made mistakes. And Warren Buffett talks about the same thing, is like, it's okay if we make mistakes and we lose money. However, if you ruin our reputation, that's like, I will be ruthless. And this is something that could potentially be ruining the hard-earned, well-built Tanager reputation. And legitimately, your hands are tied, where you're pleading to get this resolved. There's and And yeah, so maybe talk like I know. Yeah, this is a growing problem. I in that video, somebody else said that an estimated 65,000 thefts were occurred in 2024, which is a 40% increase over the year prior. So this is massively growing, and I wonder why.
Yeah, to your point, well taken. My dad always said it takes a lifetime to build a reputation, 5 minutes to lose it, right? And so you have to be careful with that. The situation we're dealing with is certainly impacts our reputation. And let me walk you through some of the things we've gone through to give some context to you and your listeners to maybe help understand at least what we went through and what was the basis of my testimony. And if there's others out there that have experienced those same things, I strongly encourage them to reach out to Senator Cruz, Senate Commerce Committee. As this issue is developing, the more people that can call to show support for these issues, show that it's not isolated to larger companies, to particular segments. I know this is hitting everybody. That would be incredibly helpful. But Tom, what's concerning about this is the level of sophistication that these criminals now have. I mean, over the years, we've dealt, like everybody has out there, and those of your listeners that are in the logistics space, with the double brokering frauds and things like that, right? The quick pay schemes. We've dealt with that. That was a relatively manageable, right? We could have systems like we use, which is RMIS, I think has now been purchased by Truckstop. I know there's Highway, there's others out there. Between those platforms and the use of FMCSA, you can oftentimes implement enough processes internally to avoid some of those double brokering scams. But the problem now is they're getting very sophisticated in the cyberspace. We had an instance where somebody hacked our DAT account. After they hacked our DAT account, they started spoofing all of our emails, posting loads as though they were Tanager on DAT. And, when those things occur, Tom, as you well know, we had nothing to do with it. And so we end up 30, 40 days down the road with a bunch of trucking companies calling us saying, hey, where's our payment for this load? We're looking in the system saying this load never existed. We don't know what you're talking about. And as we all know, there's some of the small, owner operators out there. They get real fired up, as they should. The reality is these scammers are the ones making the money. They're representing themselves as trucking companies to other freight brokerages to get freight, and then they're turning around and representing themselves as freight brokerages to scam these legitimate trucking companies into hauling this cargo, and then they take the money in the interim there, usually through a request for a quick pay and fuel advance or otherwise being paid more quickly. And so that happened to us. It wasn't our cargo. We just happened to be the company whose identity was stolen, and them representing themselves as us to other trucking companies. And so then they start filing on your bond, and it just turns into a nightmare where just the amount of work my team had to put in, we had to call all the factoring companies and tell them to turn our credit off essentially and pre-approve every single request for payment for Tanager Logistics. As you can imagine, we're certainly not a major freight brokers, but we're big enough where there's enough volume here that was pretty taxing on my team. And so when this occurred, I had my IT director start trying to do some reverse IP searches and try to identify who these people were. We had called them at one point, with the load they had posted, trying to get them to, take a hike and leave us alone. And they sounded Eastern European to us, Tom, but the reality is their level of sophistication. They have, they use VPNs and other means. It's really hard to, track backwards when they're spoofing your emails. And so we kind of came to a standstill where there was really nothing we could do ourselves. And so we reached out to our insurance company because I have a cyber policy, as we all do or should have. Well, technically, I didn't have any kind of a loss related to that policy, so they weren't willing to help. I was hoping they could, because insurance companies have a degree of sophistication. So then we go to the Texas Department of Public Safety. Well, as you start with law enforcement, you get this thing, right? It's like, well, this is not our jurisdiction. And so DPS says it's not our jurisdiction. FBI takes our information, won't call us back. I had a friend, actually, through my son's baseball team that worked at Department of Homeland Security, reached out to him and said, look, would y'all just please be willing to meet with us? They took the meeting, but wouldn't take the case. They said they would contact, communicate with some of their other law enforcement agencies, but, it's a domestic agency, a law enforcement agency, and they just don't have the reach that the FBI does. And so we ultimately, Tom, were just stuck like Chuck. I mean, there's nothing we could do. No law enforcement was willing to take it. And come to find out, for the federal law enforcement agencies to take these cases, I've now learned this through my testimony in Washington and the ATA briefing me, that currently you have to have a loss of $1.5 million or greater in order for those federal agencies to investigate these crimes. Well, when you have the average cargo theft loss equating to around $200,000, in order to reach that $1.5 million threshold, they have to investigate these cases as an ongoing criminal activity and to aggregate those thefts in order to reach that $1.5 million threshold. Well, they're not willing to, if they're telling you they can't do it to begin with because it's too small of a case, then unless they're directed by somebody that's either elected to office or is at the top of their agency, they're not going to engage in essentially a RICO case, right? I mean, to get to that $1.5 million at 200,000 a clip, you've got to look at it kind of like a RICO case where they're continuing to investigate these people and aggregating all of the crimes in which they engage in. And so we just couldn't, it was like a failure to launch situation. And so that's what we're attempting to tackle. And we can go into that in a minute and how we think we can address that at the federal level. But, that's one instance. We've also had, people holding our loads hostage. That was another frustrating thing, was not related to what I talked about in Washington, but that's happening a lot too. We were having trouble with DPS or anybody being willing to help us with that in a previous instance too. And so, this has just taken on a life of its own. And if these criminals don't have law enforcement chasing them, if they don't have anybody that is doing this being prosecuted, and they're essentially operating with impunity, they're going to continue to do it, and they're going to continue to do it at a faster rate. And I think we're now seeing it to a point where it is a material and systemic problem that needs to be addressed. Because when, losses that ultimately affect the consumers and our shippers are reaching $35 to $60 billion annually in losses, it's time to take note here and get to work, because we have to have federal law enforcement and able to track these folks down in cyberspace.
Man, it's so frustrating coming back, it's so frustrating because you risk losing your company, or other people are definitely at risk of losing their company. You're getting blamed for it. You're pleading, you're trying to get some help. Nobody's willing to come help you out. And then your hands are tied. You can't fight back almost, it feels like. As a sole one-man company, I mean, they're not reaching that threshold limit. So maybe if like a bunch of companies banded together and reached that $1.5 million threshold, then maybe they would look into it. But even then, what do they do? The world's changed. It's become so global and so like shadowy with the rise of technology. It's frustrating because our ancestors, our grandparents that were settling Texas, say, the West, they definitely faced cargo theft. But when they moved out, they knew who was trying to rob them. At least they knew it was Jesse James and his crew, and that they could go back and have a wanted poster, and they could get the Texas Rangers involved. They could get form posses, and they could fight back. They could actually do something as men. And here it's like you're fighting a ghost in some ways, and the world's changed so quickly. It's time to form like a modern Texas Ranger group or a modern posse of some sort, which in some ways Highway's doing that, banding certain brokerages together to identify these MCs that are potentially, risking doing some things wrong. However, You're right, and I think you're doing the right thing, and I don't think a lot of brokerage owners or transportation companies have been doing that enough. Is reaching out through politics, getting Senator Ted Cruz involved, and and really making our elected officials aware and holding them accountable to, hey, we need backup. Like, we are what keeps this country moving. Let's
Yeah.
go. Let's do something. Let's
Yeah.
look into this.
You're making me think of the Wells Fargo videos back in the day.
I've never seen him, brother. Tell me about him.
Wagons, Wells Fargo, and they were
Uh,
transporting gold bullion or cash or whatever, right? And they're getting chased down with guys with rifles and shotguns, between
man.
6 horses. I mean, it's funny that, to your point earlier, it's kind of like the shoes on the other foot, right? They had trouble tracking them down back in the day because you had to physically go out and find them. There's not videos and phones and all those things to help track people down, but yet the ability to identify and investigate those crimes was substantially easier, right? Now we can find anybody anywhere in the world probably at this point. There's no telling the sophistication our government has, but yet, it's resulted in this ability to essentially hide and play this cat and mouse game criminally from anywhere in the world. And so you're very limited on what you can do, right? Because there's only really one law enforcement agency that has the reach outside the U.S. on behalf of we U.S. citizens, and that's the FBI. And so we're in this weird juxtaposition where, these crimes are occurring, in terms of the people putting in the effort and engaging in it, right? They're not, I would imagine, generally not within the United States, right? Because they have learned that they can scam us in this industry via our ability to pay people, whether it's EFS or ACH or wires. And so the ability to transact, especially with payment digitally, is certainly resulted in our inability to really find these people and what they're doing. I can tell you from the accents that we have heard, they don't appear to be, in the U.S. And that is not to be disrespectful for anybody. I know there's a lot of people that immigrate here, but the reality is you can tell when somebody really is speaking English as a second language, right? And so we're seeing that. In fact, we had our FMCSA website hacked with somebody putting a new phone number and address there in order to engage in another fraud. So, they're getting to the level where they're actually being able to infiltrate the login portals for our federal regulators through the FMCSA. And so when this is happening, you're kind of miffed. You're like, where do I even start? And when all the law enforcement agencies are telling you that they don't have the interest or the time or the capability to do it, it is very alarming, and it's very discomforting because you're sitting there very hopeless. And so I think you're right. We need to band together. I have worked for years and been still working on tort reform in Texas. We got a bill passed a few sessions back, and I will agree with you. And we certainly, I have been a part of a case study that has proven that our collective voices can make a difference. Individually, you feel as though, your voice really can't make a difference, right? Because, of your size, and unless you're with one of the very, very large brokerages out there with a lot of those relationships, you feel as though, you're alone. But if we band together and we can collectively approach our legislative officials in Washington, or folks that are in the House and the Senate, they do listen. And it's interesting that when you first think about working at the state or federal level legislatively, that, they don't really listen. They really do. They get a real bad name, politicians do, but I will say them and their staffs listen. And when they're receiving a bunch of phone calls and emails and they're hearing from constituents that live within their districts about these kind of issues, they'll take note. Whether they can actually advance legislation is another thing based on their position and a multitude of other factors. But that's what we have our industry associations for, Tom. I mean, it's not up to us to go try to advance this legislation and work with them through the technical process of the bill drafting and votes and all that. That's what we have industry associations for. That's what TIA is involved with for the brokerage industry. American Trucking Association, Truckload Carriers Association for the trucking side. So we can lean into our staff up there to do a lot of the legwork. They just need a voice. And it is a lot more effective to hear from business owners and executives about these issues than just continuing to hear from lobbying groups and trade associations. And so we're going to have to come together and take this fight back to them, because if we don't, I have a feeling that they're using this as a moneymaker for other criminal activity. And until they're starting to get prosecuted, we're going to continue to have this problem.
I'm thinking, how can we start to band together? Would it be enough if people reached out to me or you via our social media, as Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever, and said, just message posse or cargo theft, and boom, we started banding people together? Is that big enough, or is it more so going to the TIA type conferences, going to ATA, and is that the path forward as quickly as possible? Like, how do we expedite this to make it happen, not the traditional way where it gets stretched out and before anything happens, it's a ton of sleepless nights, lost freight, etc. Like, how do we respond, boom, as fast as possible? How do we pack a punch back here?
I will say, Tom, I love your enthusiasm, and I just appreciate your passion for the industry, right? We need more people like you. And honestly, I guess, given my West Texas roots, I'm just an old school guy on technology and social media anyway. I didn't get on Facebook until college. So, I'm at this millennial game. But look, certainly if we can utilize this platform, the relationships that we have, Tom, that people want to reach out to us, please do. Because I think what we can do is help coordinate a response and informing people of when is the appropriate time to start responding and reaching out to these legislators, folks in Congress, I guess, particularly on this issue. Yeah, absolutely. Let's utilize your platform. Anybody wants to send a message on LinkedIn or whatever social media pages you have to you, I would say have them reach out to you. You can get with me. Those folks that are connected with me, please reach out to me. And then what we will probably do, Tom, is then in turn figure out how best to coordinate with those industry associations. I mean, there is no question that TIA, ATA, TCA, they do a fantastic job. We need them to run point on advancing this issue. There's no question. So if you're not involved in an industry association, I strongly encourage you to do that. But listening to podcasts like you have, Tom, just keeping yourself informed is also incredibly important. But, I think we have a pretty good strategy on how to attack this. What we're hoping for is there is a bill that we're hoping that Senator Cruz or some other senators in the U.S. Senate will carry that would form. And if you listen to my opening statement, that testimony, I discussed the bill, but it's to create a coordinated task force that will actually start investigating these crimes. That's what we have to have. FMCSA has a new fraud division. I think to the extent that anybody out there is having an issue with double brokering or any fraud related activity, please report that to the FMCSA. We're not really sure exactly how effective that task force is for FMCSA, but certainly the more reports they receive, we can start asking Congress through their oversight ability to see what they're doing to fix it. Because right now, I think even right now, Tom, there's 2 Tanager Logistics on the FMCSA website. There's mine, and then there's another one that's completely illegitimate. It's what we could tell from our investigation, some dude from Africa with a home address in Ohio of a woman that has nothing to do with logistics that's still there. And we called FMCSA and asked them to take it down. And they said, unless they're using your DOT number, we can't. I'm like, well, if you look at the facts here, it's pretty evident that we need them to start taking down these illegitimate groups, because they're starting to utilize them being on that safer website in order to advance these crimes. So we've got specific bills that would allow for this task force that would direct these federal law enforcement agencies to start investigating these. Mm-hmm. Once we do that, the next step then is for us to get coordinated and remain coordinated so that we can report these crimes to those law enforcement agencies so they can start actually having some wins. What we don't want to see happen is, we get Congress to, pass some legislation that creates this coordinated task force on this particular issue, and then nobody's reporting it to them. They don't have enough work to do, and so they disband it and go focus on some other set of crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be certainly being coordinated.
And it sounds like they're going to have to work with the FBI to be able to potentially bring the fight to the people that are in Africa or in Eastern Europe, wherever in the world that this is happening, so that they can actually, because it's not just defense. Like, you've got to catch Jesse James eventually. You've got to catch the bandits, or else they're going to keep on finding different entry points and different attacks. And so, I love that idea.
It's not smash and grab. I mean, we've got it. It's got to be coordinated, because each of these federal law enforcement agencies, Tom, have different capabilities. They have different jurisdictional capabilities, right? And so we have to work with them, and they need to be, intimately involved with industry on addressing these. And so I think as we see, hopefully, this bill get passed, I look forward to hopefully the opportunity to work with them so that we can start reporting it. So I think, in the reality is, Tom, we don't, I had one of the U.S. senators, I think it was Senator Lujan out of New Mexico, was asking about, do you think that we need more law enforcement to attack this? And my response to him, and you'll hear it in my testimony, is it's premature to even answer that question, because nobody's investigating it at all right now. So we don't even know the extent of the problem. We do believe that there are, offices full of people, like a call center, engaging in this activity. I mean, and we know that there is a major problem here, but we don't even know where it's happening, Tom. I mean, we don't know if it's in Europe. We don't know if it's in the United States. We don't know if it's in Central or South America, China, Asia, India. We just don't know. And so we have to at least start looking and figuring out where they are. Then we can band together and start fighting them. And if they're in the U.S., all the better. I think our ability to punch them back in the mouth here in the U.S. certainly be easier than being located outside of the U.S. But I would imagine they probably are outside the U.S. And so we'll just have to rely on our federal law enforcement agencies to get after them. But, with the new administration, I feel certain that they're going to be very supportive of law enforcement. As a Republican myself, not trying to get political, but, President Trump and his team, I'm sure, will, be supportive of this issue and trying to tackle law enforcement that's affecting industry in the United States.
I love that. I love that so much. And so we did talk. That's the formation of the Texas Rangers to protect cargo throughout. That's the equivalent of what our great grandparents were doing when they were settling the West. Another form that just kind of came into my mind to like really dig into this, is the posse option, where people were banding together, but they were traveling together to protect each other. But in today's time, I think that's entrepreneurs and an opportunity for entrepreneurs to hire, or really, really good. You mentioned the FBI. They have the technology. They have the ability to find out exactly where these operations are, to find out exactly who it is, where it is, right? And so I'm curious if we had hackers that a company, if somebody formed an organization that can pinpoint all these details and hand it on a platter to whatever organization, to potentially do something about it. I wonder if that would be another way to more quickly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, Tom, anybody that has the technological capability, if they've experienced something like this, in order to, look, I'm not a huge tech guy. Our industry is now, I think, dictated and required that we all become a lot more sophisticated and technologically, right? Just because we're adapting to a changing environment as an industry. We're certainly all consuming a lot of technology, I think a little bit to the point of fatigue. But, to the extent there's groups out there that this is happening to, companies out there that have, I would say probably more advanced technological capabilities than I do, that can, find out more facts and information about these crimes that are occurring and the people engaging in them. Yeah, we've got to please do so legally. I don't know.
Let's start a service like that. Let's get a company that's.
I mean, as long as it's legitimate, right? What we don't want to do is engage in illegitimate activity in order to combat illegitimate activity. That would underpin the cause. But to the extent people can gain more information, yeah, do that and let us know. We will certainly can use more cases and more instances of this happening, and the more we can dial into the groups that are doing it, all the better, because we can then communicate that to our elected officials that hopefully will give them ammunition to get this thing over the finish line for us. And I think you're the perfect person for it, Tom. I mean, look, you and Freight Caviar, y'all have a ton of followers, right? And I think we have to lean into these platforms in a digital world that have the reach that y'all do. I just appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and engage in this. And so I certainly, you and I, as we do already, work closely together, albeit on the business side with all the help you've provided us on the staffing stuff. But certainly on this issue, aggregate that information. Everybody please reach out to Tom, me, like I said, and we'll start communicating that, and we'll get a list together on how to communicate back with folks at the appropriate time when things get moving.
Love that. Yeah, you're right. It starts with us. It starts with us taking action. I mean, we are talking, like I just recently talked to Alex Freles. He's got cybersecurity. That's what he specializes in, and he understands it. And then we've got the guys at Highway. We're dropping an episode with them soon, and they're doing everything they can to help protect. And so you're absolutely right. And then we've got people like you coming on here, sharing the stories, reporting these incidences so that others can be like, oh, dude, I'm not alone. I faced the same thing. Holy shit, you did that? That kind of worked, or that didn't? Okay, I'm going to save that my time there. And communication, and the truth is the way to fight this deception.
Like the old saying, Tom, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, right? And I think it's important for people first to know that they're not alone. We certainly don't want to get to a point where we're just filing this with our insurance companies and they're paying out on the claims, but we're not addressing the underlying problem, because that will just result in higher insurance rates. And so, we do have to certainly band together, and I think we're going to do that. So go get in the fight. You know me, I'm not one to look for a fight, but I'm certainly not walk away from it either. So, get the cowboy hat I bought you, come to Texas and we'll get after it, Tom.
One moment, brother.
I love this. For the listeners out there, Tom came to San Antonio and
yeehaw, let's ride into battle, partner.
I got the cowboy hat at Paris Hatters. So that's what he just got out. So
one moment, my speaker is wrapped around here. Yeah, that was smooth. Smooth.
I was just saying on here, Tom, I'll let your listeners know I gave them a little intro on we got you cowboy hat at Paris Hatters.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, visiting you guys in Texas, that was so fun. And we're looking at coming out again in April for TIA, and then to swing by your guys' place.
I've been in communication. Yeah, and I've been in communication with TIA on this issue. In fact, there was a staff member of TIA that was there at that hearing, and so they're certainly engaged. Nice. They're going to start taking it. But I'm glad you're coming back, Tom. We took you to a good old Texas barbecue, a little live music, got you a cowboy hat. We got you a little acclimated for a Chicago guy. I think I hope we're winning you over from Chicago down to Texas here.
Oh yeah. I love New Braunfels, San Antonio, Austin, Texas is what's up.
We've got a lot going on in Texas too on tort reform. So, there's a lot of irons in the fire here, but we're fighting the good fight, trying to get some more tort reform measures done here in Texas, which is good. So, it's like everywhere you look, there's a fight, and I'm happy to go get in it on behalf of my companies in the industry.
Speaking of that, everywhere you look, there's a fight. There are so many things going on right now, and we have to choose with our focus and our time which fights to take. Another fight that you guys have been fighting that I've just been so proud and to be involved with you and is the trafficking, the human trafficking situation going on. And oh man, it's just they're like strong people have to come together now. One thing that we can do is we can use platforms like this to speak about the truth, to share the message, and that's something that the shadow side can't do. And so
you can use it for good, right? Like we train our drivers through the truckers for trafficking platform, and so yeah, I mean, anytime you can pay it forward and help alleviate or address some of these just horrendous crimes that are occurring out there, and not to speak politically or get folks fired up politically, R versus D.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. Know that what was happening prior to this new administration at the border. Yeah. We're living in Texas, and it's crazy. And it's not what you don't realize. I mean, if you just look at the way that this last election was in Texas, every single county on the Texas border voted for Trump. He won every border county in Texas on the Texas-Mexico border. First time in history that's happened. That's not, I don't say that to get into politics or show the support I have for one candidate or the other. It's just a reality that people out there were fatigued by this huge mass influx of people that were coming. And it wasn't just people from Mexico or Central South America. They're Haitians. I mean, they're coming from all over the world because there really was not much enforcement. And so that would naturally, with criminal organizations, result in them finding a revenue stream there, which is human trafficking. And it has become a major issue. As you've seen the legalization of certain drugs in the U.S., you've seen them pivot to other means of revenue generation, which unfortunately now is causing a lot of human trafficking, which is just horrendous because, I mean, the age of these men and women, and it's men and women both. I mean, I have 4 boys. If you got to understand, this is not something that's isolated to just women being the victims of. It can be men too, and boys. And so certainly we always have to do what we can to advance good causes like that as an industry, especially on my trucking side and other truckers out there that are on the front line seeing this every day.
100%, Adam. I talked with Travis Ahern, your business partner, a few months ago, and we got into a lot of religion and kind of theory and yin and yang. And one thing that
Travis, y'all probably got pretty philosophical.
Oh yeah, we got philosophical. But like I don't know, there's something in me. I went into the woods this week. I saunaed and river plunged and just kind of reconnected, rejuvenated after a full month of traveling the U.S. And just kind of got back to the roots. And I met a guy there who sold his construction business in London, came to Poland, sold his house, everything, and right now is just traveling the gypsy life, living out of a tent, living in the woods. He's kind of like the Lorax. He's like, we've got to protect nature. And I stayed up until
over. Y'all like chasing wolves. I hope your shirt. I do still hold the one requirement with you that you got to keep your shirt on, man. You make the rest of us look bad. You're out there hunting
easy with me.
wolves in the woods. All right, you got to tell me about this.
Yeah. So me and the Lorax, we talked until 4 a.m. and we talked about how evolution. He's a firm believer in evolution, and that there is no right and wrong. And this is something for our listeners. I mean, it's people my age that are kind of coming up and growing. And so when the war in Ukraine started, living in Poland, I felt worried about my family and worried that it might spill over. And it triggered like another instinct in me, like a deeper instinct. And at first it was fear. And then I turned to faith to just have courage. Like, hey, I now believe this life is a test to do the right thing and to stand up. And for the dark side of the yin, there's the light side of the yin. And I'm still exploring that, but I just wanted to catch maybe your thoughts on that. Like every part of us has this light and dark side, that cargo theft, that black wolf and that white wolf, or whatever you want to call it. And
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's a broad question, Tom. I would say Travis is probably better for these questions. He had multiple quotes from multiple books. He comes to my office and talks to me. The book he's reading, I have trouble tracking. I'm like, look, man, I'm a simple creature, man. Give me numbers, baby. But I think that you know, I guess to step back, I think we've got to start coming back together as a people, right? And having understanding. I think that I am a person of faith. I'm a Christian. That's my personal religious belief, my background. But I think that look, everybody, regardless of what your faith is, because I have friends that are Muslims, I have friends that don't have a religious belief at all. I think ultimately, we have to have some understanding of others. And I think we have gotten to a point in our society where it's so divisive politically. Certainly, we don't want that happening religiously. I think you have to ultimately, whatever your belief system is, whether it's the cosmos to Christianity or Judaism or whatever it is, finding that core value system and what is defining your morals, right? I've told people that aren't Christians in the past. I'm not one to preach at people. My faith is my own, but I have told people in the past, even if you don't, you know, uh, adhere to the religion itself, Christianity, reading the Bible, for instance, is great because there's a lot of good proverbs in there. It's really about helping you to understand, when you come to an issue, come to a crossroad, and you got to make a decision. If you don't have some kind of faith or some kind of an anchor, how do you make those decisions? How do you know to go left instead of right? And I think I personally I fall back to my faith because it gives you direction. And so people just need direction, and I think they need to know what's right and wrong. And those that believe in right, certainly, probably some Old Testament stuff here. I'm not a biblical scholar, but sometimes you gotta fight for what you believe in too. And I think when we have people that are running counter to the value systems that we have individually, we have as an industry, good versus evil to the, I guess, the extent you were talking about, we've got to go fight back. And so, I would say, regardless of where you're from, just, be a good person, and I think give back and have a heart for more than just put the next dollar in your pocket and get involved on behalf of yourself, your company, the industry. Those are just things that have driven me over the years of giving back because look, when the Lord pulls my ticket, he pulls my ticket. I'm not taking anything with me when I'm gone. I'd rather do some cool stuff with cool people is what I say. It sounds probably a little too cavalier for a CEO, maybe, I don't know, but I just enjoy doing great things with great people. And I think, when I'm laying on my deathbed, I'd rather be saying, oh, well, than what if. And I think, with all of my past experiences, including what we're talking about here, I think, Lord willing, I'm going to get there. So, and so will you and everybody else. It's just, it's finding good people. And I can only imagine how cool those conversations you were having around a campfire up till 4 a.m. I can tell you learn more about somebody around a campfire than anything on earth, Tom. I'm telling you, that's where our cultures probably combine, right? You're doing cold plunges, chasing wolves. I'm, out in a bunch of mesquite trees, but, learning from other people too, and building those networks and relationships is really what life's about. And so paying that forward in whatever way you can is always gratifying.
I love that. I love that. You're so right. Um, Adam, I can go on and on and on, but I know it's morning on a Thursday. You run a lot of companies, you've got things going on. I am heading to San Antonio soon. And so, speaking of campfires, I would love to do another one around a campfire where we can dig deeper into not just cargo theft, but anything from health, history, business, commerce, freight. Yeah, we'll take.
I'd love that. Look, it's like you and I were
Mhm.
talking before we got on. You're like, what all are we going to talk about? And obviously, the cargo theft thing is front and center. When you've got some momentum, let's chase it. So we certainly need to stay there. But yeah, I'd love to know what you and your listeners are interested in. I have businesses, as you know, in the logistics space. Also have several real estate companies. Stay real involved politically. So anything that is of interest to you and your listeners, I'd love to sit around and talk with you about because, I've always wanted to do a podcast myself. I just don't ever have the time to do it, Tom. But, I think as you start getting older, it's how can you give back? And I have a lot of people that reach out to me that are starting businesses. And I'm like, look, I'm happy to help anytime, man. Like, tell me what you need. I can tell you from my experiences. I remember more of the failures than successes, but even core fundamentals. But, there's things like tariffs that are on everybody's mind. What does that look like? I mean, we have a huge bilateral trade relationship between Texas and Mexico. And so there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. And I think I'd love the opportunity to talk with you more, and let's dive into those things. And heck, I even have friends that may be able to bring value with us, Tom. So I say we do it and see what we can do to bring value out there. And you need to have your folks that follow y'all just send you in questions, and we'll get into it. I'll talk about anything, appropriate, inappropriate. I'm easy. So I'd say we just get into it, and let's do it at a campfire while you're here. We get us a little whiskey and a campfire, and then we can start telling lies and getting into some real stories.
Yeah, that's what's up. I know everybody listening would love to tune into that and hear and just hang out, especially in a world that's becoming more I mean, a lot of our viewers, they're slinging freight all day. And it's hard for them to even get out into the wild because they've got loads to manage sometimes. And maybe they don't have teams that can track it sometimes, and so for them to, I know myself, when I was building a trucking company, when I was in the dirt slinging freight all the time, I would hop on YouTube and I would hang out with people vicariously listening. And so, if we could bring that value to a younger version of Adam Blanchard, a younger version of myself, or anyone else that, thinks they can learn, like, comment below, drop your thoughts. Let us know if you'd like to see that. And let's go. Let's fight the good fight.
I'm with you. Well, thank you for having me on, Tom. This has been a blast. And I hope we have the opportunity to do it again when you're here in San Antonio. You're always welcome at our office, and we'll certainly see you when you get here. And so we can, we'll get into it then, and look forward to the comments you get here. Hopefully you get some good ones, and we've got some good subjects to get into, and I'll bring my cowboy hat with us too. All right.
I love it. Signing out, brother. Thank you.
Adios, amigo.